Good day, everyone. I'm Alimaco Rowelyn together with my partner, Miss Saril Cristel Marie. We will discuss the topic in Lesson 3, which is Approaches and Teaching Literature. First, we have the objectives. At the end of these lessons, you are expected to differentiate the three approaches for teaching literature. Second, develop understanding and appreciation of the approaches. And last, engage in activities contextualized to a particular approach. Introduction. Approach, according to the Macmillan Dictionary, it is the particular way of thinking about or dealing with something. Thus, in the context of teaching literature, approach would mean the best way or the best practice a teacher uses to teach literature to learners in the classroom in order to achieve his or her goal of imparting relevant and meaningful knowledge to the learner. Further, it is a way of looking at teaching and learning underlying any language teaching. Approach is a theoretical view of what language is and of how it can be learned. It means it represents the sum of our philosophy about both the theory of language and the theory of learning. In other words, it is an approach to language teaching. Approach describes the nature of language, how knowledge of a language is acquired, and the conditions that promote language acquisition. Traditional approach. When we say traditional approach, it is the teaching of literature in our school has become mainly lecture-based with the conventionally used traditional teacher-centered approach. Okay, when we say teaching literature, it can be exciting and challenging all of the same time in a world where everything happens in nanoseconds and students are constantly engaged with technology. It can be difficult to get them to engage with longer text. Teaching literature can help learners to develop their understanding of other cultures, awareness of difference, and to develop tolerance and understanding. Many of us must be familiar with this approach where the teacher spells out important terms and concepts as necessary part of the discussion. That is according to Pugh 1988. So, it is a thing of the past in which teachers are the controller of the class, where they teach and take complete responsibility for the learning environment. All the duties and powers are vested on the teacher, and he being the lecturer in the class, teacher play the role of an instructor for the students and also the decision maker for taking the decisions of what to teach and how to teach. For in the traditional approach, the student has no choice but to listen and regurgitate what the teacher says. That is according to Rashid et al. 2010. In this traditional approach, students are definitely still has its place to memorize facts and figures just as ever before, but have turned to interactive learning to inspire students and keep the teacher-student relationship vital. Students' learning relies on listening to teacher's lecture or rote memorization of informations, figures, or equations. As other one being a traditional approach, in this classroom setting, the teacher provides background information like the social, political, and historical background to a text. In that settings, the teacher provides a necessary information to consider in an effective ways in writing a text. It is also helps students to understand and know if what really is the point of view of a text.
Language-based approach. It became vital to look for a more effective approach to teaching literature that would help learners interact profoundly with literary texts and other genres as well as reconsider the teacher's role. A language-based approach seemed to be the appropriate option. In this approach, the teacher guides the students to express their opinions towards a text. It helps students pay attention to the way the language is used when studying literature. It is student-centered and activity-based for productive use of language. It improves students' language proficiency and incorporates literature and language skills among the students. Furthermore, language-based approach extends the students' word repertory as well as reading and writing skill seems to be the most appropriate. The learner is seen engaged in varied language activities such as jigsaw puzzle, fill-in-the-blank exercises, organizing sentences, creative thinking and writing, as well as performance activities like drama and poetry recital. Therefore, in this approach, students can practice all the activities mentioned. In this approach, learners are exposed to the target language and connected to certain aspects of the language, such as the vocabulary. In other words, in the language-based approach, literature is used to teach linguistic skills. Reader response approach, according to Rosenblatt in 1978, is said to be the best-known theorist who espoused the reader response approach. In her transactional theory, she distinguishes clearly between utilitarian reading and aesthetic reading, the former referring to reading for a purpose and the latter referring to reading for pleasure and appreciation. In the latter, we find the reader engaged in a deeper level of interaction of transaction in reading a literary text as he responds to the text through an interplay of his thoughts and way of thinking, feelings and emotions, judgments and reasoning, and biases and prejudices, among others. We find both parties in the transaction mutually affecting each other, where a symbiotic effect occurs between the text and reader. Furthermore, reader response approach produces changes in both the author's text and the reader's growth. In this approach, the writer and the text producing a cathartic effect on the reader as his or her personal life experiences. In this approach, reading is a transaction or exchange in which readers construct meaning as they progress through a text. Because readers bring their own experiences and ideologies to the text, their responses will differ. The reader infuses personal meaning into verbal symbols on the page, and the text channels meaning through its structure. A reader must be active, constantly building and synthesizing meaning, paying attention not only to the words on the page, but also to the images and emotions he or she is experiencing.